for being all here tonight. I want to start with a few words on European Alternatives, the organization which coordinated this event tonight. We are a European membership organization based in about 15 countries now, in the EU and outside the EU, working for democracy, equality and culture beyond the nation state. So our purpose is to empower European citizens to take action at the European level. The organization was created in 2006-2007, and we now have, it has grown since then. And like I said, we are now in around 15 countries, organized in self-organized local groups all over Europe. We stand against the discourse according to which there is no alternative, and notably no alternative to the way the EU is currently run and currently functions. So this is why at the end of last year we launched the Citizens Pact, which is a coalition of individuals and organizations working together before the election of the European Parliament next year for a better and a fairer Europe that is more citizens-oriented. The result of the Citizens Pact, or one of the results, will be the Citizens Manifesto, which we aim at producing by the end of this year to present and to advocate for concrete proposals for Europe, notably towards the candidates for the election next year of the European Parliament. So this Citizens Manifesto will be elaborated by citizens all over Europe through citizens consultations such as this one tonight. So we have organized already around 30 consultations in many countries in Europe. After these consultations, this series of consultations on different topics that are important for that European citizens feel strongly about, will invite representatives of the different consultations to transnational forums. There will be 3 this year, in Barcelona on civil rights, in Venice on democratic reforms of the EU, and in Sofia on work, employment and welfare. You can find more information on each table. You have documents telling you more about the process. We'll then present the manifesto after research workshops aimed at developing the proposals. We'll present the manifesto in October during the Europa Festival, which we organize in many cities in Europe simultaneously in October then. And at the end of the year, we'll have an official launch of the manifesto at the European Parliament. So this is to tell you a bit more about the process. This consultation tonight is part of this bigger project. So yes, you can find more information on all the tables, and then there you'll have also forms if you want to know more about European Alternatives, or to join, or to find out about the media initiative which we run. Before giving the word to Nicolo to talk a bit about the issue that we'll discuss tonight, I just would like to remind you that if you want to tweet, there is a hashtag for the event, which you'll find on the walls, and then I'll take the word afterwards to tell you about how we will proceed with the different discussion tables. So I'll give the word to Nicolo.
Thanks. The event is called To Be or Not to Be in the EU, Is That the Question? And you'll understood why we called it that, because in this country there are more and more politicians calling for what we call an in-out referendum, including Nigel Lawson yesterday in the Times. The other option, which is on the table, put there by David Cameron in January, is not to have an in-out referendum, to be a member or not to be a member, but rather to have a choice between a renegotiated membership of the European Union or not being a member at all. It seems to us at European Alternatives that there's a fourth option, which is currently not presented to the British public. You might not think there should be a question about in or out of the European Union. You might not think that the question is, should we have a renegotiated relationship with the European Union or should we be out? But rather what we might want to do is reform the European Union so that it works better, not only in the interests of British people, for example, but for all Europeans. There are plenty of Europeans right the way through the continent who think, for example, that Europe isn't working perfectly democratically right at the moment, that it isn't respecting fundamental rights, whether they be the fundamental rights of migrants arriving at our shores, or of jobless citizens, or people protesting, and many others. There are plenty of people who think that Europe is not working perfectly to promote social justice or equality inside Europe. And so we might think what we should do is to reform the European Union from the inside so that it works better. That's one of the things we mean by calling our organisation European Alternatives. An alternative Europe which respects better democracy, equality and culture beyond the nation state, right the way throughout Europe. So one of the things we're promoting through this project that Elena was talking about is precisely that, a citizens' pact amongst the citizens of Europe to reform Europe in a progressive direction. Nigel Lawson yesterday in his article in the Times, which I wouldn't blame you if you haven't read, but you might have heard parts of on the news as well last night, said that the main reason for him why there should be an in-out referendum is because the European Union is attacking the City of London and the financial interests of Britain, as he would put it. And so he thinks that to protect what they call a national interest, which seems to be associated with the City of London, it might be better to pull out of the EU. I have a couple of things to say about that, which I hope illustrate my philosophy of the European alternative as well. Firstly, one might think that there's an unrepresented section of British population which thinks it's rather a good thing for the City of London to be more regulated, to be more responsible, for there to be a financial transactions tax, for example, which is one of the things the European Union is promoting. Those people at the moment have barely any political representation inside of the British Parliament, so maybe Europe is also an alternative there as well. A set of political alternatives that you don't necessarily have in your national country, but you can vote for and support at the European level. Secondly, although Britain did much to open up global markets, sometimes with its gunboats, it seems to me highly naive to think that Britain now on its own will dictate the way that global capitalism will work. Nigel Lawson is highly naive if he thinks that by leaving the European Union, the Europeans will simply leave the City of London alone, not try to regulate it or change the way it works. Indeed, the way the financial transaction tax has been set up is precisely to avoid the possibility of people escaping it by moving beyond the borders of the European Union. So there again, the choice is between working inside the European Union to get a better way of doing things, or sitting on the sidelines and actually not having any say at all, which is what would happen if Britain were to leave the European Union. So I hope that also illustrates the reasons why I think it's better to engage from the inside and to promote democracy in Europe in the interest of all Europeans. There are plenty of suggestions on the table for how that should be done, and we'll hear about many of them, I think, over the course of the evening. There are people who said it would be firstly much better to empower the European Parliament much more, that the President of the European Commission should be elected based on the result of the European elections, which will be next year, for example. There are people who say there should only be one President of the European institutions, not a President of the Council, and also not a President of the Commission, but just one President who is elected. There are proposals for reducing considerably the power of the European Council, which is at the moment disproportionately powerful in the European system. There are proposals for increasing the role of citizens in making decisions directly through a kind of participatory democracy, and we'll hear also about the European Citizens' Initiative this evening. There are many proposals that we can do and work on, and we will. But I wanted to end by drawing attention to another aspect of that question, which is, when we talk about anything European, there's a tendency to think the European project in a vertical way, that it's about the institutions all the time, and how to make them better, or be part of them, or not be part of them. And it isn't only about that, it's also about the way in which the citizens of Europe relate to one another, and respect and help each other, and act together or act in opposition to one another. And so I wanted to emphasize that even if this evening we'll be talking a lot about institutional issues perhaps, there's a much more important issue, which is actually about how Europeans want to live together. And we've learned also from other parts of the world that no matter what happens with the government, if the people are working together and helping each other, there's always some hope for a future change. And I think that London has a particularly important role to play in Europe when it comes to this last point. Because here, as you all know, we have a great diversity of people from all over the world who need to find a way of getting along. And so Europe should, so rather London should become an example, a leading example in Europe of precisely a new kind of understanding and solidarity between peoples. And so I think it's fitting that we're talking about this question here this evening, and I hope that after this evening we'll find a way of speaking about it to more and more people also outside this room. Thank you.
So in terms of process, as you can see from the format of the room, we'll use the